It's come that time of year again to dip our toes into the unknown depths of wealth fetishism. It's the regurgitated story of the average guy or girl who's been gifted the rare opportunity to integrate into a prestigious institution and rub shoulders with the offspring of blue bloods. Almost never do the ultra-rich take in a stray, but in the rare instance they do, these are the tales we're told. We get to see through the eyes of said average guy or girl, and with them marvel at the ungodly square footage of a Gothic Victorian castle that survived the 18th century. We are witnesses to the articles of virtue plucked from ancient Italian grottos, sitting smack dab in the middle of the culvert-ceiling hallways, waiting to be plucked again. We're at the mercy of the all-knowing, devoted butler whose own family buttled for the same estate since the day it was erected, and they can clean a mean stain out of a carpet that predates the internet. What I'm saying is, this is what happens when the common folk are taken into the wings of the upper crust. Nestled in the picturesque landscapes of mid-2000s England, this tale unfolds against the backdrop of academia, privilege, and the allure of an eccentric aristocratic family. Our protagonist is a wide-eyed university student itching and scratching to weave himself into the tweeds of the Oxford elite. Meet Oliver.
I just wanted some more Oliver Twist.
Not quite. Oliver Quick. Oliver is captivated by the enigma that is his affluent schoolmate, Felix Catton, a blithe and sanguine young man with the world in his palms. He's a kind chap, this Felix, who will lend a helping hand to a desperate friend in need. We see this when he extends an official invitation to Oliver to stay at his family's estate for the summer. This cordial offer presents itself when Oliver grieves the death of his father. He showed up at Felix's dorm like a lost puppy in the rain. Felix, being that kind chap, introduces Oliver to an old family tradition that involves casting stones into a river to mourn the dead. This scene, this instance, acts as a sort of delimiter for the story, because from there, this becomes a film I highly despise. Barry Keoghan has officially earned the nickname Crazy Mofo whenever I see him plastered on my screen. When he is assuming a role I assume is going to be a chancy or mischievous role, and in this case, hazardous. I went into this movie completely blind off the strength of Barry's past performances. His work is one that I can trust to be strange and quizzical, so I was open to what I perceived to be some sort of horror film. And while Saltburn is classified as a black comedy instead, I was definitely left horrified. Oliver Quick is perceptibly the sheep of the story for the entire first act. He's a bit weird and incongruent, dressed in the cheaper versions of the clothes he sees on the Oxford kids. His relationship with the rakish beau, Felix Catton, is at first parasocial and one-sided as he watched from afar. Initially, the closest he had ever gotten to Felix was through Felix's cousin Farley, a rancorous, pompous young man with a chip on his shoulder the size of a Cool Ranch Dorito. Their debate about the use of the word thus was a foreshadowing that they'd be an impossible match of oil and water. Oliver has better luck with the rest of the Catton clan though. He wins over the lady of the manor simply by being attractive. Elizabeth Catton detested ugliness as if it were a choice that people made for themselves. The patriarch of the family, Sir James Catton, lacked any awareness beyond the iron gates that kept the plebeians out. He moves around Oliver as if he's just a son that's returned home from school for a break. The unhinged, emotionally burdened sister, Venetia Catton, knows more than she lets on, allowing her days to pass while she's under the influence. She temporarily busies herself with Oliver like a summer project. Lastly, Felix Catton takes an immediate liking to Oliver. They form an unspoken bond that teeters on the edge of brotherhood and romance. And this is where we see those attributes of how the other side lives. Refer back to my introduction for a refresher as needed. The second act is where Oliver's true colors bleed through and his intentions become inscrutable. I liken Oliver to a very, very loose representation of someone with sundowning agitation. He's restless as the sky darkens, turning into a sexual deviant at night. Each time he weaponizes his authority, he does it with sexual intimidation, whether it's perceived as consensual or not. There are 4 aggressively ostentatious scenes that depict Oliver's vile behavior: the bathtub scene, the vampire scene, what happens after karaoke, and the blasphemous grave scene. Unfortunately, each member of the Catton family is knocked off like a chess piece, and in the end, Oliver dances throughout his newly acquired estate in a triumphant gloat. So you're probably wondering why I've titled this video in the fashion that I did and why I hate this movie the way that I do. The meat of this persuasion essay is not going to be like others. This is not a video that praises vile eccentricity. Just because something unapologetically challenges social customs, it doesn't mean it's art. Sometimes it's just sordid, and art is used as a misnomer to evade culpability. But if you want to go there, let's go. What valid reasons would classify this movie as art? One could say it's because of the 4:3 aspect ratio format. It's a bold choice, but it's a rather limiting style of filming, depending on who you ask. In the 1940s and 50s, TV sets adopted the 4:3 ratio, a format abandoned by cinemas as they embraced wider screens. And it wasn't until the 1990s that the television landscape shifted to also accommodate broader aspect ratios. These days, using 4:3 is purely a choice of aesthetic and forces the viewers to subvert their normal expectations. Another perspective could argue that it's the allure that is deeply intertwined within the backdrop that makes this art. In the vibrant era of the noughties, precisely set in 2006, Oxford University bores a sophisticated resemblance to a matured Hogwarts. Meanwhile, the ornate Baroque facade of the Saltburn estate presented a dichotomy of glamour and filth, an architectural paradox that spoke volumes about the complexities of the time. It's indeed seductive. Yeah, those are good enough reasons to call it a form of art. But what about the script? If anyone were to argue that the content itself is art, you'd lose me. Earlier, I mentioned 4 aggressively ostentatious scenes, all performed by Oliver, portrayed by Barry: the bathtub scene, the vampire scene, what happens after karaoke, and the blasphemous grave scene. The bathtub scene depicts a hot and bothered Oliver witnessing Felix in a moment of self-pleasure. When Felix finishes exiting the bathroom to go to sleep, Oliver takes the liberty of drinking the remaining bathwater and licking the drain clean. Literally. The vampire scene involves blood from the female nether region of Venetia Catton. What happens after karaoke is a forced act of intimacy on Farley. And the blasphemous grave scene is Oliver wholeheartedly mourning Felix's death. What starts as an innocent expression of grief turns into ecosexual intercourse before a cross. Critics characterize Barry Keoghan to be impressively committed, brave, methodical, but all he appears to me is someone ready to go to any length to push the boundaries. And I'm uncertain if this should be deemed an honorable trait. In any other industry, such behavior would be labeled as attention-seeking, exhibitionist, or even crazy. However, in Hollywood, it seems to be met with prestigious accolades. Emerald Fennell, the writer and director, is also garnering similar acclaim for what I perceived as a twisted perspective. Most things should be left inside our heads, and just because you can do it, doesn't mean you should. I am concerned about the growing acceptance of explicit content and the celebration of morally questionable behavior. In a society that promotes sexual liberation and discourages kink shaming, there should still be a boundary between what is shared openly and what is kept private. This narrative seems to glamorize a dark and sensationalized depiction reminiscent of dark web porn, lacking depth and substance. It's not a story about a man grappling with his urges, seeking redemption and healing. Rather, it's a tale of infiltration, murder, and the pursuit of wealth at the expense of a family's entire bloodline. And some might even dismiss the brutality. Why? Is it because they're rich and they deserve it? or because we're poor and we deserve it. Saltburn exemplifies a do what thou wilt mentality, but what it doesn't tell you is that indulging in sinful pleasures may lead to a swift demise. I understand that comparisons can be made with other movies, and it's valid for anyone to highlight those examples. However, the existence of potentially worse content doesn't justify or make the problematic aspects of Saltburn acceptable. Saltburn has prompted me to be more thoughtful and introspective, to be mindful of the content I consume and share. This video may have enticed you to want to see it even more, and I'm fully aware of that kind of effect. I'm not here to police you. This is truly a video requesting that you just be introspective and thoughtful about the content reaching our nations and the harmful messages they're sending, especially to children. That's it.